ahead and click that button now. As I mentioned in the chat, if you don't mind, if you can put your company name in the chat as well as your name, that would be greatly appreciated. Unfortunately, we won't have time to have each of you introduce yourselves, but that will give us at least an opportunity to know some of the folks that we're talking to today. My name is Tanya Cherry. I am the Safety Outreach Specialist with Montana State Fund. And I'm going to be presenting today with Sophie Magnuson. She's one of our SMC safety management consultants that works with our policyholders and the rest of our team to ensure safety success. So we're going to go ahead and get started again. I'm starting out, so unfortunately you'll have to listen to my voice for a little while, and then I'll hand it off to Sophie once we get about halfway through. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about the probationary period. New employees, so those employees are at higher risk of injuries during their first year on the job. What we found is about 2 years ago, about 42% of our injured employees were employees within their first year of employment. As we did these focused courses in our workshops, we found that those numbers were decreasing, and we wanted to continue that trend. So that's why we are here doing these workshops via webinars today. So really just asking the team and the group here, whoever's attending, how does hiring the right person contribute to your safety culture? Any input, any feedback there? I see Frank thinking. There's so many ways that hiring the right person contributes to your overall safety of your facility, as well as the safety that is perceived by other employees. Together, they can work to create a really phenomenal safety culture, or together they can work to create a really terrible safety culture. Obviously, we're in the path of wanting to create a safety culture that's excellent, so that's why we're here to talk to you today. Additionally, keeping the wrong person can tremendously impact, even if you already have a well-built safety culture. If you hire the wrong person and you keep the wrong person, that can really impact that safety culture. It can really impact the perceptions and feelings that the rest of your employees have about safety if you have someone that is not contributing to the safety of the workforce. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Sophie. So what is the probationary period? Today, that's what we're here to talk about. So let's kind of talk about it. So that's the period of time after you hire an employee where you can make the decision as an employer whether or not you're going to keep that employee. That probationary period is super important, not just for you, but for the employee as well. Really can benefit both of you by emphasizing the importance of safety, not just during the hiring process, as we talked about in our previous webinars, but in that probationary period, really stressing and emphasizing the importance of safety with that employee and utilizing other employees' expertise to help that employee understand that safety is important to everyone at your facility. Sorry, go back. Go ahead. Go back one. Sorry, Sophie. So for the new employee, it really helps them to understand their role, evaluate their compatibility with the company, determine whether or not they feel that the company's safety culture is a place that they want to be. So, and then for the employer, it's really that essential period to help the new employee to make sure that that employee understands that safety is the priority for that employer, and to make sure that it's a good fit on both ends. Go ahead, Sophie. Sorry about that. So during this probationary period, it's important to do a number of things. And so basically this list is our agenda today. We're going to talk about each of these in greater detail on the coming slides. But so during that probationary period, we want to ensure that we're having safety touch points with the new hire employee, that we have the job safety analysis in place and have reviewed it with the employee, that we consider other programs like work hardening and mentor programs. And Sophie will talk about those two later. So your safety touch points. Super important. These are periodic safety touch points. Really recommend, depending upon your environment and your industry, but recommend at least a weekly touch point throughout their probationary period with either the hiring supervisor or if you have a safety management consultant, not your consultant with Montana State Fund. If you have an internal safety person, that would be a great person for them to touch point with as well on a weekly basis. Just making sure that those touch points allow you to assess the employee's safety performance, providing feedback and setting new targets if necessary, redirecting if necessary, making sure that employee is on the path that you want them to be on from a safety perspective is super vital. Feedback during those touch points is, like I said, the most important part, not just from you, but from that new hire employee to you as well. Their feedback can be just as vital if they're seeing, they're a new set of eyes. So they may be seeing things that you haven't seen in quite some time. So their feedback is just as important regarding your safety at the facility. What do you think should be reviewed during a safety touch point? Thoughts from the group?
Yes, whether or not the established safety protocols are getting implemented.
Absolutely, Frank. Thank you for participating. Absolutely. Whether or not they're meeting your established expectations and protocols for safety, that is a huge. And again, that can be a conversation between you as well as from them. They have a different perspective because they are new and they do have new, fresh eyes. Anybody else have some feedback they'd like to share about what should be reviewed during the safety touch point? All
I
right.
think,
Thanks,
maybe just
Sophie.
asking that employee, hey, do you feel safe on the job? Sometimes that question could highlight maybe some challenges or some hazards that you haven't seen or that the rest of your crew has become a little bit complacent to. It could also give you the opportunity to have the conversation with that employee and address, if it's a PPE issue, if it's a procedural issue, whatever that might be. But it shows that employee that you really care about safety. It's a priority. It also shows them that their thoughts matter. When you're on the job site, speak up. I want to know. Let's make a change, but I don't know unless you tell me, right? So it helps open up those doors of communication.
So Sophie is absolutely right. In addition to the benefits that she mentioned, if you ask that question of your new hire, you're going to find out if they feel that they have a training gap, right? So if they're feeling unsafe on their job site, on the job, whatever the job may be, and they communicate that to you, you want to make sure you have that open door policy where they feel that they can communicate that to you. It's going to tell you whether or not there are training gaps, whether or not there are areas of opportunity to improve that person's safety awareness of the work that they're performing. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So,
This is Aaron, the
as
city council.
sorry,
Can
go
I
ahead,
chime in
Aaron.
for a second? Well, for us at the wastewater plant here, it's a little bit more of a complicated process. And with our 6 months probationary period, it's very difficult to cover every aspect of this job. One thing that we do in the 6 months is we have a 1 month evaluation, a 3 month, and a 5 month. We do ask a lot of those similar questions of each employee in that time frame. And then also when they're hired, we do a whole it's probably like 5 hours of JSA training,
Mm.
job safety analysis sheets that they go through. And also like for us here at the wastewater plant, we try to get them through our SOP binder, but it's like a 4-inch binder with SOPs that we have for the plant. But that feedback at that 1 month, 3 month, and 5 month is very critical for us here. So
I would argue, Aaron, that you are correct in that not only is it critical for you in the jobs that you're doing, but it's critical for every job out there. Some jobs, obviously, like yours, is going to be more hazardous than others. And those JSA reviews and those SOP reviews are going to be super important. But Being that we work for a workers' comp insurance provider, I can tell you that we have injuries across the board in every industry. Oftentimes, we tend to find that those companies like your own that are doing such a great job with their training, orientations, those types of things, do tend to have less injuries, even though they can be more highly hazardous job. So yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and like you said before too, you get new eyes on it. So as they're reading through the JSAs, we've had new people coming in, catch things, and we've had to reword them. Same with SLPs,
Mhm.
different situations, they make them change and people look at things different. So it's
Absolutely.
nice to have those new eyes on there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Those are all good points, Aaron. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And you gave me like the perfect in on my next slide, right? So as Aaron mentioned, he was talking about JSAs, right? So many of us use that acronym. So it stands for Job Safety Analysis. So a job safety analysis is a safety tool that can be used to define and control the hazards associated with certain processes, jobs, or procedures. Really, what you do when you create a JSA is you outline the steps associated with the work that has to be performed. You outline the hazards associated with each step, and you outline the mitigations associated with those hazards. Um, as Aaron mentioned, it's super important that an employee review the JSA prior to doing the work. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that they're aware ahead of time of what those hazards are, of what the expectations are for each of those hazards from a mitigation perspective, and really ensure that they do feel safe. They do understand that safety is the priority as they move forward in those job steps. Does that make sense to everybody? Great. Aaron, it sounds like you have a lot of experience with JSAs. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Um, no, not really. That's a pretty good explanation. It breaks it down pretty simple. Um, and like I said too, is you're continually growing as a company. As new people come in, they see things different. It's like, oh, how come we don't have a GSA for this? Well, we never thought about doing one for that. So it's just that it's a good analysis to provide for people before they do the work, like you said. And it helps, it's very good at preventative.
That's perfect addition. Thank you, Aaron. So, just going into the steps of creating a job safety analysis, pretty simple, as I mentioned before. So, really, you select the job for the analysis in order of priority. If you've never created job hazard analysis or job safety analysis before, you really want to start with what you believe to be your most hazardous jobs and prioritize from there and work down from there, so that you make sure that you're providing that focus on those hazardous environments first. After you've selected the job that you're going to do the analysis on, really you want to make sure that you're involving all of those employees who are on the front line doing the job. They know the job the best, they know the hazards the best, and frequently they have the best ideas for mitigation. So it's super important to involve those employees in this creation of work. Um, After you've selected the job, you want to break that job into steps. And this is really where that group of folks, if you're utilizing those frontline employees, those employees who are actually performing the work, it makes it very easy to break the job into steps because, again, they're doing the work, they know the work, and they can do that for you. So break that job into steps. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Sophie. Once you've broken the job into steps, as I mentioned before, your next step is to identify potential hazards. Um, Really, this is just a series of questions that you can ask those employees who are performing the work. What types of things are you exposed to? Do you have moving parts? Do you have guards? You can ask a lot of questions about what type of work that particular step requires, and that helps you to determine what those potential hazards may be. Then finally, once you've identified those potential hazards, really you want to focus on the hierarchy of controls, but you want to, at this point, determine preventative measures for the hazards that you've identified. Again, I find that those employees who are on the front line doing the work really have a great idea of what preventative measures will work and work most effectively. Typically, even if the employer doesn't have a job safety analysis in place, they've tried certain things to make the job safer, and they typically have a really good perception of what would work. And so they can be very, very helpful at this stage of the game. And that's as easy as it is to create your job safety analysis. Once you have that job safety analysis, it can be used for so many things. As Erin mentioned, using it in onboarding to help that employee understand the hazards and the mitigations associated with the work that they're going to be performing is essential. But additionally, you can do an annual review of that job safety analysis, not just to remind them of those hazards, as we all get complacent with the work that we perform on a daily basis, not just for that, but to really delve deep into that job safety analysis to ensure that it's capturing what you truly believe to be the hazards, what the steps truly are. As Erin mentioned, those new sets of eyes oftentimes can find gaps in those job safety analysis because they are a new set of eyes. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. Which is Sophie. I knew it was coming. So everybody, Sophie's going to take over for a little while. She's going to talk about our work hardening programs, as well as, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the final topic.
Mentoring.
Ah, there you
Mentoring.
go. It's all you, Sophie.
Good morning, everyone. So, how many of you have heard of a work hardening or a conditioning program? Okay. So a lot of the jobs that we're doing nowadays are pretty demanding physically, especially when a lot of folks are coming from maybe tasks where they're working at a desk or they do a lot of sitting once they get off of work. Anymore now, people are, they get off work, they sit down, they watch Netflix. They don't do a lot of movement, a lot of physical training, that sort of thing. So our bodies don't automatically keep up with the work that we're asking or requesting it to do. That's just what it is, right? So when someone is new to a job, or maybe they're returning from an extended period off, their muscles, your joints, your endurance, all of that is not conditioned to the workload that we're asking it to do. So the problem is we start to see things like strains and sprains. We see people who get sore, they get fatigued really quickly because their body is not used to that work. Does that make sense? So sometimes, not always, but sometimes new employees or maybe those who will come back after an extended break, they feel that muscle soreness and they worry that they might be injured. Yeah, I've been doing a desk job forever, and now I'm out with a shovel. I've been working these long days. My back is so sore. I think I might have got injured, right? That can lead to things like, of course, real injuries that can happen, but maybe also just unnecessary paperwork. Maybe they're just sore. Maybe that was it, right? Maybe they decide they need a day off work. They need to rest. They need to stretch. They need to ice, all of those things. So the question then is really, how do we help people safely adapt to the demands of the job? So that's where this work hardening or conditioning comes in. All we're doing is gradually building up the strength to allow that employee to have confidence in their job and get through their day, right? Now, here's an example of what this looks like. This is just one example. This is not the end all be all, right? This is just gives you an idea of what we're talking about here. So this would be a typical work week, 5 days. Day one, maybe they're doing 4 hours of safety training, or they're doing their HR orientation. They're signing up with their tax, their W-2s, their direct deposit. They're getting all of that figured out, right? And then they have 4 hours out on the job. And a lot of their out on the job is going to be hanging out with a more experienced employee, learning the equipment, learning the jobs, learning, some of the tasks, where the PPE is located, where the first aid kits are located, that sort of thing, right? Now, day two, again, might be the same thing. 4 hours of training. So you're getting them through fall protection. You're getting them through their respiratory protection, classroom training, their HAZCOM. They're getting through all their safety trainings in the morning. And then in the afternoon, you're out on the job again. You're working with so-and-so. They're going to walk you around, show you the site. Now, day three, We scale it back so we only have 3 hours of training, and then you've got 5 hours of on the job. You kind of see how this works. We are getting them in the routine of the tasks, making sure we have plenty of time to get all their training done. We're not throwing them to the wolves on day one, if that makes sense. So I think that this is great. It helps us ease into the tasks that we're going to be doing, prevents a lot of those strains and sprains injuries, which at the State Fund, we see a lot of those. So we need to be careful. We need to get our bodies ready for the work that we're doing. And this is a great way to sort of ease into that, if you would. See, we have a chat here. Yeah. So couch to an industrial 5K, basically. You wouldn't go out and say, hey, I think I'm going to run a 5K tomorrow. I've never run in my life, but how hard could it be? You're probably going to be hurting unit, right? It's going to be tough. So a lot of times we engage in a training plan and it eases us into that mileage. It eases us into running. So the same thing for the job. That's what we're talking about here. So it sounded like none of you are currently doing this. This isn't the only way you could do it. Of course, I know you need folks out on the floor. That's why you hired them. They need to go get to work, right? So you can scale this to what's appropriate for your operations. This is just one example, right? Any questions or comments on work hardening or the conditioning program? Okay, we'll keep cruising. Now, we're going to lead into mentor programs. I would advocate that this is probably going to be the biggest game changer, especially during this probationary period. I always think of a new employee, like if we take ourselves back to high school or middle school, it's your first day at a new school and you walk in the door. I think, like, what are some of the things you're feeling? One, probably a little intimidating, a little unsure. You don't know the lay of the land. You don't know where all your classes are. You don't know where you're going to sit at lunch, right? The same thing goes for a new employee. You show up on the job, it's new people, new tasks, new equipment, new job sites, all of that, right? It can be really overwhelming. So having a mentor program in place helps ease some of that transition. And it also ensures that that employee can work safely as they go out on the job, right? So job shadowing is really some of it too. You might have that person come out and you've got someone on your site who's experienced, you trust them, they've got a great safety track record, good perspective on the job and the things that are going, they're very knowledgeable. Pair them with that person, right? There's so many benefits to it. So we'll go ahead and jump into those. Okay. So this mentor program, what this is going to do is really set the tone for safety from day one with that new hire, right? So the new employee comes in, they're going to learn these safe behaviors by watching more experienced employees, which is so impactful. Not just handing them a handbook or handing them the safety manual and say, hey, read this, sign the back page, and then you're out on the job. Nobody remembers that. And let's be real, are they actually reading it or are they just skimming through and signing the back page, turning it in and heading out the door? I think it's probably the latter. Having those mentors on site can help new hires recognize different hazards in real time, stuff they might not realize is a hazard. And that a more experienced employee says, you know, I've been here a time or two and I've seen somebody's sleeve get caught in that equipment. I'm going to tell you about it right now. That's more impactful than reading, you know, a pinch point document or a lockout takeout document that says, you know, don't wear long sleeves when you're doing this task or you know, whatever that might look like. So that's really good. It's also how safe work habits become routine. So that person, your new employee comes in, they're working with someone else. When you're new to the job, you're kind of relying on those around you to help you ease in and learn the tasks. So if they have that person who's right there with them side by side and says, let me show you how to do this. And they're walking through the hazards, they're walking through the steps of the jobs, and they're letting you know, this is how we work on this site. That's way more impactful than saying, hey, read our mission vision statement and understand we have a good safety culture. Now out you go, have a great day, right? I would argue that. There also comes some benefits when it comes to support for that new employee. So you're new on the job, you walk in the door, you don't know anyone, you're going to have a lot of questions about what you're doing, how you're doing it, where the PPE is, what's the right task, right? Having a lot of questions and no one to go to for answers is tough. The new employee wants to come in, they want to perform their job as best they can, and a lot of times they want to prove that they were a good hire. They come in, they're eager, they're excited, a little nervous, but they want to make sure that you know, hey, you did right by hiring me. I'm going to be a good employee. So that can sometimes lead them into doing tasks they're not trained on just yet. Jumping in, using equipment that they haven't been task trained on yet. So having that mentor there is going to make sure that they do only what they're trained to do and not engage in some of those other things that they're not quite ready to participate in yet. It helps them feel supported. They have that person on site that they can go to and say, hey, I have a question, or this doesn't quite make sense to me, or I know I was trained on this, but remind me, what am I supposed to do in this scenario? And that person isn't a phone call or an email away. They're right there on the site. They can walk right up to them and say, hey, what's going on here? Could you help me out? Right? That's going to make that new hire feel more supported. They've got somebody there that they can lean on. They kind of have a buddy on the job already from day one. And I go back to my high school or middle school example. You walk in on the first day, it's intimidating. You don't know these people. You don't really know kind of like the social pecking order, if you would, just yet. You go onto a job site, you're brand new, you're assigned a mentor, there's your person. They introduce you to the rest of the crew. They kind of bring you under their wing. Hey, come, you can hang out with us at lunch, or you can sit here and do this. Really, the added benefit to that, of course, safety is a huge one, but it also really helps with retention. I feel like I belonged from day one, right? It wasn't this kind of social thing I had to crack into. It was, here's my guy, he said, come along with me, I'll teach you the ropes. And day one, I was part of the crew, right? And we know hiring is expensive. It's takes a lot of time to get the right person in the door. And then we know from this new hire series and the data that we have that new hires are at risk. So if you can get a good person in the door, make them feel part of the crew, and then keep them for a long time, that's going to benefit you so much in the long run. Okay, so some more mentor program benefits. So the first one is knowledge transfer. There are people on your crew that have been there some time and they know some things. We do not want to lose that information, right? So when you have a new hire and you have a mentor and you pair those two together, there's some knowledge transfer that happens. That mentor is able to share, things that they've learned on the task, on the job for the last 20 years, right? Here's how we do this, and here's why we do it this way. Really helps you to preserve some of that knowledge and share it amongst your team, which is, in my opinion, priceless, really.
Sophie, can I add to that? This is Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Aaron.
A lot of times too, with that knowledge transfer you're talking about, um, just some experiences for me is, I'm that guy that has tried to do things by myself. So I know that it's wrong to do that. But also I've had to learn, coming from an operator to a management position, is that as new people do come in, there are better ways of doing things. And my philosophy is okay, this is why we do it this way. I want you to do it this way for now until you can prove to me that there's a better way that is safer, that gets the job done to the same standard and the same goal. And it's not that there's not new stuff that can be done or new ways of doing it. It's just we got to prove it, the safety aspect of it and the end result. So
Yeah. It could go both ways. Yeah. You might have a mentor in place and the mentee may come in and say, wait, why are you doing it that way? So selecting the right mentor who's able to step back and say, oh my, why do we do it this way? You're right. Tell me about, what you're thinking or what you see in this situation. Yeah, huge. You're right. Thank you, Erin. I appreciate that. The next one I have here on our list is this role clarity. So, how well does that new employee really understand, comprehend, like, what are the expectations? What does this role entail? What is the organization expecting out of you? Now, all of that, of course, is in the job description and these things, but we all have heard the all other duties as assigned, right? That kind of blanket, the umbrella that goes out there. Um, Having a mentor right there helps clarify those things because you can read a document and still have a whole lot of questions. Even if it is a extremely thorough, well put together, great document, it's still helpful to have somebody there just to have that conversation, right? And I think having clarity on your role, what you're responsible for, what your expectations are, really helps when it comes to engagement with that new employee participating and engaging in that job and, with the others that they're working with. We already talked about that loyalty piece, right? But it also, in my opinion, helps boost self-esteem. Like I understand what my job is. Um, I, I kind of say that clear expectations are kind, right? If you go in and you say, hey, I expect you to do X, Y, Z, and you walk away and that person has a lot of questions and no one to really get an answer from, that's not a good spot. Most people don't like living in this kind of like gray area of like, he said to do this, but I'm not entirely sure exactly what he means by that. I'm a little confused. I'm not sure, if I just hop on this equipment, if I don't, what's going on? You leave them in a state of confusion, that's uncomfortable, especially when they're new on the job. So we want that role clarity to be there. We want very clear expectations. If they have a mentor there, they have somebody to clarify stuff right then and there. So that really, really helps. Understanding your culture on your job site, it's so great, right? When you have a mentor paired with that new hire, right, they're able to better understand like what's the organizational norm, right? Am I supposed to cut corners here and there? Maybe at my last job I did. So that's kind of how I'm coming into this one. And then I'm working with the mentor. He is doing everything by the book. I guess maybe I shouldn't be cutting these corners, right? Sort of helps immerse them in here's our culture, here's what our expectations are, here's how we work here, right? Really helps them get into that. Career development too is great. So junior employees helps them learn the skills, the behaviors from more senior employees. That's it. A little bit like the knowledge transfer there, but if they want to learn new tasks, new jobs, that sort of thing. Let's say you've got an operator and that's really where that person would like to be. That new hire says, I see him and that's a job that I want to do. That helps. They're paired with that person. Now they can sort of job shadow, ask questions, figure stuff out. How'd you get to where you're at? How do I get there? All of those is great. And then we have this top talent mentoring. So a lot of times you will have a few employees, a handful of them, and you consider them kind of like top talent, right? These are the people that they work hard. Gosh, they're really safe. They really stand out. They do a great job. I wish I had a role for them, right? I wish I had like one step further for them to go, but I just don't right now. Not every organization has like, oh, you're going to keep advancing for as long as you want to advance, right? Sometimes we hit that wall and that's just kind of where we're at. Those people, when they're in those roles and there's really no room for advancement, they might look elsewhere for advancement. So allowing this top talent mentoring gives them something else to challenge them. Like, hey, you're there. I wish I had another role for you to step into, but I don't right now. But I do have a new employee. Here's why I think you would be a great mentor for them, right? Is that something you're interested in? Leaning into this mentor role, taking somebody new under your wing, teaching them safety, teaching them the job, what we do, what we don't do, about our culture, all of this stuff. So you're giving them that additional challenge or that task to take on, which sometimes can help them stick around even longer, right? I really enjoyed mentoring, or it feels good that my supervisor or my boss has come to me and identified me as this person, and that they trust me with these things, right? So that's a good one. Ensuring safety. Yeah, when you've got a mentor-mentee situation, that mentor is able to ensure that the new employee, the new hire, is going to be working safely. That's a big one. And then this developing a social connection. So there's a lot of research out there that's shown that when people feel connected to their coworkers, at least one of them, they stick around longer. It helps, right? You know somebody on the job. You have somebody where if you're just having a bad day, you can call them up and blow off some steam and just complain for a minute about what's going on, why it's frustrating you. Just kind of let it out, vent for a minute, right? So having a mentor, really you develop that relationship from day one. And I should say too, there really is no, gosh, you're going to mentor this gentleman from this date and then you're done at 6 months. You're done. You don't have to mentor him anymore. It never works like that, because oftentimes they build that relationship, they develop that social connection. It's ongoing for years. I think about my start at the state fund. And I really had a mentor, if you would, still to this day. I mean, I reach out to him all the time, ask him questions, bounce things off of him, talk through scenarios that I'm in, right? And I've worked here for 8 years now. So it's really a continuous process, if you would. Okay, so let's go into the steps. Oh, I see some chats. I'm going to check them really quick. Mentor programs in place. Yeah. Okay. So how do we start this? What's the steps to implementation? Step one, who are you going to have be your mentors? So I would say people who are safety leaders. You certainly don't want the gentleman missing 4 fingers on crutches who just came back from an injury to be your mentor, right? He's probably not a good fit. Most organizations have someone who is a natural leader. They're not necessarily a supervisor or a leader. They sort of hold that role informally, if you would. People look up to them. They've got a good attitude, a good approach to the day. They're knowledgeable on the job. They've got a good safety track record. People trust them. That's probably your person, right? You could, of course, develop selection criteria, like they have to have been here for 5 years or 4 years or something, and no safety issues in the last 2 years. You could certainly develop that, but just look for the person on your site who's knowledgeable, friendly, has a good attitude, good approach to their job, and generally works well with others, right? That would be a good person to select there. Then you want to train your mentors. Being a mentor does not come easily to everyone. It could be some conversations, some training, some, hey, here's how I would do this type stuff. Do not throw that mentor to the wolves and say, good luck. I hope it works out well. We want to give them a little bit more. So empowering that mentor, telling them what they're able to do with that new hire is really important. Explaining the expectations. So I already spoke. Clear expectations are kind. What do you want this mentor to do with this new hire during the probationary period? Do you want them checking in with them every day, twice a day, once a week? What does this look like? And then what are some of the things they should be touching base with the new hire on? So safety is a big one, right? The job, the processes, how we do this task, maybe where some of the stuff's located around the shop, that sort of thing. Help clarify the expectations for that new hire. It's also really impactful for that mentor to understand what a good culture is and how they share that message with the new hire, right? That's a good one. Then we have identify the new employees. You're gonna know who your new hires are, right? So if you've got somebody coming in the door, you've got a job posted, it's probably worth identifying those safety leaders or those mentors then, so you're ahead of the game before that new hire comes in. And then lastly here, I think that this one is extremely important. How do you evaluate and coach the new workers? What does that look like? So confirm that the new employees know, understand important safety information. And then how do you evaluate that mentor? Are you having regular check-ins with the mentor as well as the mentee? Because it could come down to, hey, these two people, two wonderful people, but they don't mix well together. And it might be that the guy I selected or the gal I selected as the mentor isn't the right one for this person. I need to find somebody else, right? So having check-ins with the mentor as well as the mentee, make sure everything's going well. The mentor doesn't have any questions, mentee doesn't have any issues, is really, really important. So I would argue that's probably one of the most important steps there is just touching base, checking in, making sure that everything's going well, seeing if there's anything that's needed from either side. So does that make sense to you all? Okay, we do have a lot of resources at the state fund on the mentor program. So if you're interested in that, please reach out. We're happy to share that information with you. This was sort of a quick preview of that, but we do have quite a bit more. So please touch base with us if you'd like more information. Okay, so what now? You're making it through the probationary period. Everything was great. You did the mentor program, you did a little work hardening, the person's fitting in, stuff is looking good. When does complacency start to set in? What do you guys think? And what does this look like? So you've had this new hire, they have a mentor, they are, having regular safety touch points with you, checking in, having those phone conversations or in-person meetings. At 6 months, does it all end? The mentor doesn't pick up the phone anymore. You're like, hey, look, I don't want to talk to you about safety. I'm just interested in getting the job done, right? No, it continues, right? But then we need to figure out what our cadence looks like. Are we checking in with them monthly? Are we checking in with them every couple months? How heavily do we rely on this mentor relationship still? I would say that's probably the most critical one. And maybe you're touching base with them every couple months, but that mentor is still checking in with them maybe once a week for a little bit, just saying, hey, how you doing? What's going on? How's the job? How's life? That sort of thing. And then really important is making sure that safety is part of our review process. So it's not just a one and done out the door. It's making sure that, hey, 6 months, we're out of your probationary period. Here's the stuff you've mentioned on safety. Here's what's good. Here's what's bad. I'll touch base with you in another 6 months. We'll do this again. Right? So with that, I'm going to switch back over to Miss Cherry.
All right, let's finish this out. So Sophie talked about a lot of really great things, a lot of really great things that you can put in place to ensure that you've got the proper employees in place, to ensure that your employees are performing safely, and to ensure that they're working together to do so. But the hard conversation, right? So I'm going to preface this slide with make sure that you speak with your internal HR professional as well as your employment law professional that you consult with when that employee is not a cultural fit. Really what it comes down to is safety as important to the work environment as production? That's the biggest piece there. Are we making it a priority? Is it a true company priority? Or is it, we want 10 more widgets today? So it's really important to ask yourselves that question. Again, like I said before, make sure that you're working closely with your HR professional, not just when the probationary period is over and going to your HR professional and saying, Sophie's not a good fit. We need to figure something out. No, all along the way, I should be touching point with that HR professional to say, here's how Sophie is doing. Here's what my concerns are. Here's where she's excelling. And having those conversations along the way so that you're not shocking your HR professional 6 months down the road and saying, Sophie's not a good fit, let's get rid of her. Okay. Ensure that you're documenting your new hire progress during that probationary period. So everything that you have done, everything that you plan to do, make sure that those things are documented. If you're going to have a mentor program, ensure that mentor program is documented. If it's not going well, make sure there are notes to that end. If you're going to have other types of programs in place during that probationary period, again, make sure they're documented. Make sure you document the good and the bad. Document, document, document. That is what's going to back you up when you decide if if you decide that that employee is not a cultural fit. The documentation is the most important piece. It's going to prove truly where you're coming from as an employer and where your concerns lie. Does that make sense to everybody? Excellent. Okay, so if we go ahead and go to the next slide. So just closing up, remember, this probationary period really, it's not just essential for the employer, but it's also essential for the employee to understand their safety responsibilities and their actions that they need to take. It's also, as we discussed, important for the company to ensure that new employee is a good, I'm going to say safety cultural fit, not just a cultural fit, but a good safety cultural fit and overall fit. We do have a ton of information on safemt.com, so please feel free to reach out to that website. There are a lot of resources at the bottom of the new employee page, and I can put that in the chat. Actually, Ayla, would you mind putting the new employee resource page in the chat for everyone? And then if you are a policyholder, your safety management consultant can assist you with all of these programs policies. They can work through with you on the new hire process. If you're even in previous webinars that we've had, even if you're curious about, how do I interview for safety? How do I find the right person to begin with? Those are on the website, those previously recorded webinars, but your safety management consultant can help you with that as well. If you're attending and you're not a safety, I'm sorry, and you're not a policyholder, you can certainly reach out and email STF Safety Outreach at mt.gov. That comes directly to me and Sophie. If you need template programs, we're happy to provide those to you. And I think that's it. Let's go to the last page just to make sure. So we do have one more webinar series in this particular new hire shot. It's going to be a question and answer. It will be in the April timeframe. There will be a team. There will be actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us on the call ready to answer your questions, discuss any questions and concerns you have about new hire safety, about how you can make an impact with those new hires. And of course, we welcome you all to attend. We welcome you to invite any employers that you think might benefit from the training to attend, as this is open to all employers not in Montana, not just our policyholders. I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions in the last few minutes?
I just want to point out too, you go through this process and it can be a challenging decision. Maybe if you get close to the end of the probationary period and you're finding, hey, this really isn't a good fit for me. You're pairing with your HR department. You're working very closely with them. It can be a challenging decision, but I recently had some perspective where there came a situation and someone was let go because they weren't a good fit for safety reasons. And that person's this employee was younger. The person's parent actually came back to the employer and said, hey, I want to thank you. I know that was hard and this was a challenge for, my son, but you may have saved his life because yes, like there were all these safety infractions, all of these things, and this was challenging for you, challenging for him, but I'm looking at this from a different perspective of like you letting that person go maybe had saved their life. So, I just want to put that spin on it of yes, it's challenging, it's hard, but we want people to be healthy and whole, right? And if it's not a good fit, it's bigger than that, right? This is a person's life that we're looking at. And if we're having issues, if there's safety concerns and you're standing back going, this isn't going to end well for anyone, right? Sometimes those challenging decisions are really for the best. So just looking at that probationary period as a window to really find the best employees, the best fit for you and for that employee, right?
I am going to go ahead and stop recording. And the reason